G'day guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be doing my Foresight GC2 versus my ExPutt RG video. And this is going to be a pretty in-depth putting video. If you haven't seen my video comparing the Alex's webcam putting for the R10 versus my ExPutt RG, definitely go check that out. I'll link it in the description below. But we're going to jump into the practice facilities and we're going to do some putting now with my Foresight GC2 versus the ExPutt RG. And first up, we're going to start again on these 5-foot putts. Okay, so we've got a 5-footer on both units. Let's just roll this in and we'll see how the data compares. I will say this is probably where the Foresight struggles, is these short putts with slow ball speeds. It seems to really struggle with horizontal launch angle. So we're going to see exactly what we get. Okay, so no problems there on the 5-footer. In terms of ball speed, we had 2.6 from the Foresight, we had 2.9 from the ExPutt. Within GS Pro, up to about 20 feet, I believe, there is a putting assist which is added to all of the putts. And this basically takes the data from your unit and it massages the horizontal launch angle. And that's because a lot of units struggle with horizontal launch angle on such short shots. So up to 20 feet, you're going to get this assist from the GS Pro software. That shot there, the horizontal launch angle from the Foresight unit itself was 1.4 degrees right. Within GS Pro, it said 0.1 to the right. On the ExPutt, it's come up with 0.8 to the right. Okay, so a little bit of a discrepancy there, but that's because the Foresight does struggle with horizontal launch angles on these short putts. Some of the newer systems, like the GC3, the GC Quad, they don't have this issue, and neither does the Unicore IXO. They're very accurate and they get horizontal launch angle really well. But because the Foresight GC2 is an older unit, it does struggle with horizontal launch angle at slow ball speeds. Okay, let's do another 5-footer. Okay, so that one there, we had a ball speed of 3.1 from the Foresight, 3.6 from the ExPutt. So a little bit quicker on the ExPutt there. Looking at the horizontal launch angle, we had 0.1 of a degree left from the ExPutt. Looking at the Foresight, we had 1.1 degree left on the unit, 0.1 degree left within the GS Pro software. So like I said, it's just adding that little massage just to help those numbers. So that's actually quite accurate between the ExPutt launch angle and the in-game GS Pro launch angle. Okay, let's hit one more 5-foot putt and then we'll go to 10 feet. Okay, so we had a ball speed of 3 there on the Foresight and we had a ball speed of 3.5 on the ExPutt. So again, we're seeing a little bit slightly increased ball speed on the ExPutt. Launch angle, we had 0.3 degrees left on the actual unit itself, which came up as 0 in game. And we had 0.1 degrees right on the ExPutt. So a little bit of a discrepancy, but again, this is such slow ball speeds and it's actually quite close. They're both very close and within a degree of tolerance. So that's quite good. Okay, so we're now at 10 feet. Okay, interesting. So we had 3.9 miles an hour ball speed from the Foresight. We had 5 miles an hour ball speed on the ExPutt. Looking at horizontal launch angle, we had 1.2 degrees left on the actual unit itself, which came out to 0.2 degrees left on the GS Pro software. Looking at the ExPutt, it had that as 0.9 degrees to the right. So that's very interesting. Bit of a discrepancy there between the two units. Biggest discrepancy I'm seeing there is ball speed. That's quite large. And as a result, it's gone way past the hole on the ExPutt software. Okay, let's do another 10-footer. Okay, hit that a little softer. So it's not going to get there on the Foresight. So we had 3.2 as a ball speed on the Foresight. We had 4 as a ball speed on the ExPutt. Looking at launch direction, we had 1.4 degrees right on the unit itself for the Foresight. We had 0.1 degrees right in game. Looking at the ExPutt, we had 0.1 of a degree left. So again, the in-game horizontal launch angles are very, very close. The reading that I got from the actual Foresight itself was a little bit off. Again, ball speed slightly quicker on the ExPutt. Okay, let's do our final 10-foot putt. It's going to come up just short in GS Pro, and we made it on the ExPutt. So we had 3.4 as a ball speed on the Foresight. We had 4.2 as a ball speed on the ExPutt. Looking at launch direction, we had 0.8 of a degree left on the actual Foresight unit itself, which came out to 0.2 degrees left in game. On the ExPutt, it had it coming off as 0.1 degree to the right. So again, in-game launch angles are very close. Ball speeds though, quite different. Let's jump back to 20 feet now. Nice, we've made it. Okay, so ball speed of 5.5 on the Foresight, a ball speed of 5.7 on the ExPutt. So that's actually closer. That's actually closer than it was on the 10-foot putts. Looking at launch direction, we had 0.4 degrees right on the actual Foresight unit, and that equates to 0.2 degrees right in game. Looking at the ExPutt, we had 1.2 degrees to the right as a launch direction. So a little bit of a discrepancy there in launch angles. Ball speeds, very, very similar on that one. Oh, just short. And we made it on the ExPutt. Okay, so looking at ball speeds there, we had 5.4 on the Foresight. We had 5.6 on the ExPutt. Launch direction, we had 0.2 degrees right there on the Foresight, which equals to 0.1 in game. And looking at the ExPutt, we had 0.4 degrees right. So pretty accurate on that putt. Actually very accurate. Okay, let's do one more 20-footer and we'll go back to 30 feet. A little bit left. Ha, the ExPutt had it going right. Okay, so for ball speed there, we had 5.7 from the Foresight. We had 5.8 from the ExPutt. So that's actually 3 putts in a row there from 20 feet where the ball speed's been pretty much spot on with both units. Launch direction. Let's have a look what we got. We had 1.7 degree left on the Foresight, which equals 0.7 degrees left in game, and that's why the putt missed just slightly left. And on the ExPutt, we had 0.7 of a degree right. So a bit of a discrepancy there in launch direction. So why is launch direction so important? So if you have a dead flat putt and you're 12 feet away from the hole, so if your launch angle is a degree right, you're going to miss the putt right. If your launch angle is a degree left, you're going to miss the putt left. Anything within there, you'll have a chance at making the putt. Anything outside of that, you're not going to make it. So that's why launch direction or horizontal launch angle is so important. Okay, let's go back to 30 feet now. Okay, that didn't feel like that much of a pull. So this is where you're going to start to see the raw data from the Foresight match exactly what you see in game. For instance, that putt there, we had 6.6 miles an hour ball speed from the Foresight, 6.7 miles an hour ball speed from the ExPutt. So very close with ball speed. That's really good. Launch direction though, let's talk about that. The Foresight read that as 1.5 degrees left, and in game it's 1.5 degrees left. Those match now because we're outside of that range where you get that massaged or that putting assist within the GS Pro software. The ExPutt had that as 1 degree to the right. So that's quite a big discrepancy now that we're seeing in horizontal launch angle. The Foresight reading at 1.5 left and the ExPutt had that 1 degree to the right. So that's quite big. Okay, let's hit another 30-foot putt. Okay, that was a great putt. It did feel a bit right, I will say. Looking at the data, we had 7.1 for a ball speed on the Foresight, and we had 0.2 degrees right as a horizontal launch angle, and that does match what I'm seeing on my unit. Looking at the ExPutt, we had 7.3 as a ball speed, so that's very accurate, very close, and we had 0.9 of a degree right for the horizontal launch angle, so that's why the putt missed on the ExPutt, but went in on the Foresight. In terms of distance though, they both look very similar, with the ExPutt going 2 foot past the hole. Obviously on the Foresight it went in the hole, but it looked like it probably would have rolled out about 1 foot past the hole on the GS Pro software. Okay, let's do another 30-footer. just right. Okay, so on that putt there, we had 7.1 as a ball speed on the Foresight. We had 7.3 as a ball speed on the ExPutt. Looking at the launch angle, this is interesting. We had 0.5 of a degree right on the Foresight. The launch angle on the ExPutt, dead straight. Distance was 30 feet, so we made that putt on the ExPutt. I didn't see it go in, but I'm assuming that went in. And on the Foresight, it pretty much went 30 feet. It went slightly past the hole, but pretty much 30 feet. So distance seems to be quite accurate between the two units. Very happy with the ball speed readings as well between the two units. Let's do one more 30-foot putt and then we'll jump into some 50-footers. Just misses right. Okay, looking at that data there, we had 7 miles an hour as a ball speed on the Foresight. We had 7.2 miles an hour as a ball speed on the ExPutt. Launch direction, slight discrepancy there. We had 0.5 degrees right from the Foresight and we had 0.3 degrees left on the ExPutt. The putt missed just to the right of the hole on the GS Pro software and the putt missed just to the left of the hole on the ExPutt software. In terms of distance though, they both were pretty much exactly 30 feet or just over 30 feet on the ExPutt, and it was just over 30 feet on the Foresight or on the GS Pro software. So very impressive. Okay, so we've moved back to 50 feet now on both units, and we're going to see how we go. Okay, so we had a ball speed of 9 on the Foresight. We had a ball speed of 9.6 on the ExPutt. Launch direction, we had 0.5 of a degree right on the Foresight. We had 0.4 of a degree right on the ExPutt. The biggest difference there was the distance the putt traveled. So looking at the distance, we had 14.6 yards, which is roughly 43, 44 feet, compared to 53, almost 54 feet from the ExPutt. So a little bit of a discrepancy there in the distance, the total distance that the putt traveled. And again, that's just going to be the two different softwares and the algorithm that they use that determines the distance. Okay, let's go for our second 50-foot putt. Better for speed on the GS Pro software. Right, we had 9.8 as a ball speed from the Foresight. We had 10.4 as a ball speed on the ExPutt. Looking at the data, we had 0.4 of a degree left for a horizontal launch angle on the Foresight. We had 0.2 of a degree right from the launch angle from the ExPutt. Those are both very good. They're both very accurate. Discrepancy there was ball speed, and as a result, the distance the putt traveled in the GS Pro software went 50 feet exactly. The distance the putt traveled in the ExPutt software went 62 feet. And again, that's just going to be the different algorithms that these things use in terms of green speed and how the ball speed impacts the distance that it's traveled. Okay, let's do our final 50-foot putt and then we'll wrap this up. Okay, a little bit short on the GS Pro software. So we had 9.2 on a ball speed from the Foresight. We had 9.7 as a ball speed on the ExPutt. So they are closer in that putt. Looking at horizontal launch angle, we had 0.8 of a degree right on the Foresight. We had 0.7 of a degree right on the ExPutt. So that's very, very similar. Looking at total length though, the GS Pro software had that going 45 feet as a total length, comparing that to the 55 feet on the ExPutt. So that's 10 feet difference, and that's quite a big difference. I know there's been a lot of testing gone on into the stimp and into the green speeds within GS Pro, and I personally trust that. I don't know how much research has gone into the stimp and the green speeds within the ExPutt software. I'm sure, being a putting launch monitor, there's been extensive research into that. But I just find it interesting that we're seeing, you know, that big of a discrepancy. Ball speeds, I guess, yep, you can say it was quicker on the ExPutt and therefore the distance would be greater, but I just don't know how much half a mile an hour difference is going to make to distance? Is it going to be 10 feet? Very interesting. All right, guys, and that's going to wrap up the Foresight GC2 or GS Pro versus ExPutt RG putting. And what I've got to say is both units performed actually very well. I was really surprised with the Foresight and those shorter putts with the horizontal launch angle. I think using the ExPutt mat actually really helped the Foresight because usually I can get some pretty odd reads on those short putts. Luckily, GS Pro has that massaging of the data or the putting assist within 20 feet that really helps you out. In terms of ball speed, there was some slight discrepancies here and there, but I think overall, up to about 30 feet, it was quite good and quite accurate between the two units. When I started to get into those 50 footers, it started to drift a little bit and there was a bit bigger of a discrepancy there. And that really impacted the distance the putt was traveling in both softwares. However, having said that, I think they're both accurate within themselves. So if you were to get the ExPutt and practice, you would get really good and really accurate at their green speeds. And if you were to use GS Pro, you're going to get really good and really accurate within their software. So both of them are very consistent within their own virtual worlds. All right, guys, that's going to wrap this video up. Hope you enjoyed that. If you did, let me know. If you got any questions, let me know down below and I will catch you guys in the next one. Cheers.